Before I begin part 5 of our lecture entitled The Truth About Capitalism, I have a correction for part 4. In part 4, I stated that North Securities Company, owned by J.P. Morgan, was broken up. I meant to say that Northern Securities Company, owned by J.P. Morgan, was broken up. So remember, it's Northern Securities Company, owned by J.P. Morgan, that was broken up. Now let's get into part 5 of our lecture. Now, Merriam-Webster's online dictionary defines capitalist as, definition number 1, a person who has capital, especially invested in business. And this definition gives an example of this in the form of industrial capitalists. This definition is also defined broadly as a person of wealth, plutocrat. Definition number 2 is a person who favors capitalism. A plutocrat is defined as a person of wealth, and Merriam-Webster's online dictionary defines plutocracy as, definition number 1, government by the wealthy. Definition number 2, a controlling class of the wealthy. And this is what exists in the United States of America. The United States is a plutocracy and an oligarchy, and they have attempted to obfuscate it and call it a democracy. So the people of the United States don't see it. But people are waking up in what I call the 21st century Enlightenment period. The people see the government corruption that exists, and they are ready for positive change. The government of the United States is supposed to be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, as stated by President Abraham Lincoln. But this is not the case. The government of the United States is a government of, by, and for the wealthy. And it's a controlling class of the wealthy, as stated in the definition of plutocracy. The government of the United States is also an oligarchy, as you'll see shortly when we look at its definition. Big money special interests are controlling the political process and politics in general in the United States. Politicians exist who are bought and paid for by big money special interests. As a result, they vote yes on legislation in favor of big money special interests over the will of the poor and middle class people in the United States. Corporate lobbyists lobby Congress successfully to get legislation passed that will benefit them to the detriment of the poor and middle class people in the United States. Politicians pass tax cuts for the rich. As a result, campaign finance reform and lobby reform are a necessity. Merriam-Webster's online dictionary defines oligarch as a member or supporter of an oligarchy. Merriam-Webster's online dictionary defines oligarchy as, definition number 1, government by the few. Definition number 2, a government in which a small group exercises control, especially for corrupt and selfish purposes. And the definition goes on to state also a group exercising such control. Definition number 3, an organization under oligarchic control. And this is also what exists in the United States of America. It is a government where the few control the many, and a small group exercises control for corrupt and selfish purposes. The government of the United States is an oligarchy, as a small group of the wealthy control the masses of poor and middle class people through the utilization of big money, with which they buy politicians who have been elected by poor and middle class people who make up the majority of the voting bloc. But the politicians work against the best interests of the poor and middle class people who elected them in favor of the interests of the wealthy who financially support those politicians in return for those politicians voting in favor of legislation that will benefit the wealthy. This is what is known as one hand washing the other politics, where big money is controlling the body politic through the means of obfuscation, making people think the United States is a democracy when in fact it is a plutocracy and an oligarchy. Democratic principles cannot be realized in a government where big money is controlling the political process behind the scenes through corporate lobbyists and corporate donations to super PACs to help political candidates win elections, while the capitalists have poor and middle class people on a treadmill working and going about their daily activities in the capitalist efforts to keep poor and middle class people so preoccupied with their daily lives that they don't see what's really going on in the government. Now let's deal with some more truth about capitalism. Two fundamental facts are present in the economic system of capitalism: the exploitation and oppression of people. And it does not matter whether it's laissez-faire capitalism, which is also free market capitalism, or whether it's regulated capitalism. Exploitation and oppression exists, and this is a fact. Now, Merriam-Webster's online dictionary defines exploit as, definition number 1, to make productive use of. Definition number 2, to make use of meanly or unfairly for one's own advantage. Merriam-Webster's online dictionary defines oppress as, definition 1A, to crush or burden by abuse of power or authority. Now, these are the two definitions of two words that are present in the economic system of capitalism: the exploitation and oppression of people. And because of the fact that workers are exploited and oppressed by their employers, unions are a necessity, and the workers' right to organize is a necessity. The workers are used for the advantage of the capitalists, and the workers are crushed or burdened by the capitalist abuse of power and authority. As the workers provide the labor to produce the goods and provide the services, with multitudes of people working for low wages at non-union corporations, where they are not able to bargain with management for higher wages. And those same non-union corporations have their workers fearful of losing their jobs if they even speak about forming a union. As a result, the workers are used for the advantage of those corporations, and they are crushed or burdened by those corporations' abuse of power and authority. And remember, those corporations are owned and operated by capitalists. So remember, when you hear the word corporations, this also includes the word capitalists. We'll stop here for today, and we'll pick it up in the next video.